Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Crowdcast. Today we're taking you through our collective learning platform. We did a COVID-19 trial recently, and we will just take you through that. So I hope everybody can see the presentation here. Yeah. So, right. So the plan today we have is just to give you again all a little bit of an overview what Fetch.ai is doing. With me today, Jonathan Ward, our CTO, who will take you through the collective learning deep dive. We'll do a general overview, and then we'll open the floor for some question and answers. So some of you might have already seen this. Some of you are seeing it for the first time. What is Fetch doing? Fetch is doing the task we've taken on upon ourselves is quite an ambitious one. We are seeing in the market quite a lot of complexity increase, and the reason is there's a lot of data hotspots being created by different systems coming online. We have the social media, we have this social advertising, we have IoT devices, we have machine learning and AI. So there is a lot of complexity which is going on into the system, and not only just that, but they're all kind of very vertical oriented. So what we are taking on is we're saying that there is this huge complexity in all these systems. How can you bring them together and actually start using multiple systems together in a much more efficient way than it exists today? I mean, today we have monolithic systems which do one thing or another thing, and they don't really speak to each other. So really the opportunity is huge, but then the task is also very huge. So you're managing increased complexity, you're doing privacy preserving collaboration. As you all know, nobody wants their data out there. And then you have to, while preserving the privacy, you still have to extract the value out of the data rather than giving it to some big centralized corporates. We want our data to unlock value for us. And also, there is a lot of wastage in the economy. If you look at supply chain solutions and you look at multi-party solutions where multiple stakeholders have to interact with each other, the systems are very inefficient. And the reason is because they're developed from top down. And what we're trying to do is build them from bottom up in a new way. So today, the three core things Fetch does is we're doing a decentralized machine learning, which is collective learning. What that enables you to do is to have multiple stakeholders collaborate to bring in collective learning, enable you to use machine learning algorithms in a more collaborative fashion. We're building a multi-agent system. What that does is it enables you to set off multiple agents for multiple purposes, and we're building the substrate which enables them to interact with each other. What all of that results into is data sharing. So you have secure data sharing, and it enables you to do that. So coming on to the more interesting bit for today's Crowdcast, which is collective learning. So we built a framework, an architecture, and the protocol to deliver a multi-stakeholder, multi-party collective learning platform. We call it the suite of products we're developing around that is CoLearn. And the first trials we've done is with the COVID-19 data set, which is chest X-rays as data points, and that's taking us into the tools which we've developed on how to deploy a solution where multiple hospitals, for example, can collaborate with each other and actually do collective learning on the X-rays that you get. Multiple hospitals upload their own data set, and they can learn and train a collective model. I will pass on to you, John, from here on to just take us through how we achieve that.
Okay. Thanks, Humayun. So just to expand a little bit on what Humayun was saying, we can imagine that data itself is extremely valuable, and what we want to do is connect people in such a way that they can gain the benefit of having larger data sets. So one of the things we know about machine learning, if you take deep learning and the really impressive developments in that field, or right the way up to AlphaGo and AlphaFold, these really latest cutting edge discoveries, what's driven all of that progress in a lot of cases is access to ever larger data sets. So the key thing we want to solve from a kind of technical point of view is how to provide the benefits of large data sets without forcing people to share the data. And of course, that has benefits in terms of enabling greater competition, so more companies can get involved. It enables potentially reduced liability. So obviously, control of data has downsides as well as plus sides. And it also potentially provides benefits in new industries and in new areas. So one of the things we're potentially interested in here is using our platform to build diagnostics very, very quickly in a distributed way to deal with really rapid and emerging threats. Okay. So just to go into a little detail of exactly how that works to make it really clear to people who might not be familiar with machine learning, is that what we typically see, and this is really quite well established in healthcare now, is that a hospital will collect data sets, and of course all of that data is digitized and stored on a database. And once you have the data in a digital form, what you can then do is and you also have diagnoses of that data provided by hospital doctors, is you can start training a machine learning model. So what that effectively does is it takes the data in the form of this neural network, and it adjusts the strength of the connections between those nodes in the network such that the network learns to classify the images according to what the diagnosis of the patient actually is. And that's inspired, the algorithms behind that are inspired by the way that humans are thought to learn and animals. So so and this is this whole workflow is really expressed in the picture on the right there. So okay, sorry.
You need me to go back? Yeah.
Maybe go back one little bit, Humayun. Yeah. Yeah, so in the picture on the right, you can see the entire workflow from patient to data to the trained machine learning model. And then, of course, once you have the model, you can make the diagnosis without the doctor actually needing to be there. And that provides a lot of benefit in terms of the a cost benefit, in terms of, a really experienced hospital staff doesn't necessarily need to look at every image. And the second thing is that there are cases where we know that an AI or a machine learning system can provide more accurate diagnoses than a doctor actually can, provided they have enough data. Okay, so that's fair enough. But as we know with say rare diseases or a new disease like COVID was, to begin with, you're not necessarily going to have a large amount of data. So you might be in a situation where you have, say, I don't know, a few hundred X-rays, and that might not be sufficient for you as a hospital to actually train a model with the kind of diagnostic accuracy that you need to actually help your patients. So what the motivation and the rationale for what we're trying to do is to say, well, couldn't we just find a way of sharing all that data in such a way that we could build a model more quickly or more effectively for solving this problem? Now, of course, it may be possible to share the data, but I don't know if anybody's worked in healthcare. Getting the consent from the patient, enabling them to share it, it presents lots of additional problems. So there's a lot of coordination problems. There's a lot of regulatory problems. But ultimately, we don't really need to share the data. What we really want to do is to work together to build a a better diagnostic tool to achieve the goals that we all have together. So the way it's implemented in our system is essentially what we have is that the different participants all take turns making an update to the model. So they all produce an iteration of the model that improves its accuracy on their training set. And then what we then do is then send that model to all of the other participants in the network, and then they also evaluate its performance on their data set. Now, this is very similar to a technique known in machine learning as cross-validation, because the real goal that we want to solve, one of the really big issues that we're going to face with training, particularly these large neural networks, is overfitting. So what that means is that the algorithm potentially performs very, very well on your data set, but doesn't generalize well to unseen examples. And one of the nice things about this system is that when you're doing this kind of voting process, what you're automatically doing is you're evaluating the performance of your model on their data sets. So you're immediately getting a benefit. And also the collective machine learning model can actually provide other information from other people's data sets. So you're actually gaining the benefit of their data as well in two ways. So one is through additional training steps, and the second one is in evaluating the performance of the model on your own data set. Okay, thanks, Mike. Next one. Oh. So another aspect of this, so we've talked about the kind of logical flow, is that what we also want is that we want this system to be flexible, and we want it to be available so that anyone anywhere in the world can contribute to the model, can join. They can be sure that it will be available under all circumstances, and they can also be sure that there's a kind of permanent record of the activities that have been used to make the model, which is, of course, the kind of use case that blockchain is perfectly suited towards. And one of the things that the team has been doing, alongside the machine learning aspect of it, is to actually build the plumbing, build the infrastructure that enables us to run these networks in any location across the world. And in the experiments we're going to be talking about today, we had a cluster in London and a cluster in Los Angeles, but there's absolutely no reason why that can't be extended and to clusters all around the world, which is it's just a question really of deploying the nodes and the software in a different location. Okay, so to talk a little bit in a bit more detail about the specifics of this problem. So what we know from the studies of COVID-19 is that it's primarily a respiratory infection. So it tends to cause damage in the lungs, which is a kind of a type of pneumonia. So this kind of a buildup of fluid and inflammation in the lungs is known as pneumonia. But what we see with COVID-19 is that the way it presents itself is different from other kinds of pneumonia. So in a healthy patient, you will have, sort of clear lungs with no dark patches or structure associated with the lung tissue. But if you have pneumonia, that will tend to be clogged by fluid, which will tend to show up on an X-ray. With COVID, there's this so-called ground glass pathology, which again looks quite distinctive and new, and gives us hope that a machine learning method can actually distinguish COVID-19 patients from healthy individuals and those with other types of pneumonia. Okay, so what we have here on the left is some telemetry from the training. So in addition to all the network itself, what we also do and work hard on is making sure that we have different tools to actually quantify what's going on within the decentralized network. And what you can see on the left is that you're seeing, so in the yellow, you have the accuracy of a node on their particular data set. And you can see it reaching a particular threshold. And in green, what we're seeing is what happens when a new node joins, which starts off with a relatively low accuracy. But what they can do is, because they benefit immediately from the model training that's been carried out on the other nodes, is they immediately get a more accurate model. And for a disease like COVID, that would obviously be hugely advantageous, because a new hospital that joins, it's an emerging disease. We back in March, it was very urgent. We really needed to get a handle on it quickly. The ability for a new hospital to join and immediately have access to a really effective machine learning model would have provided huge benefits.
Results.
Okay, and here we're seeing essentially on the left, we're looking at the accuracy of a couple of models. So in one case, in blue, what we're looking at is the performance of a machine learning model, which is trained on a subset of the data. So I think we have, I think it's around 1,200 images. So if you had a couple of 100 images and you were trying to build a classifier based on that at the start of the pandemic, the blue curve shows you the kind of accuracy you would get. In red, what we're seeing is what the same kind of node with exactly the same algorithm, with exactly the same data set, in fact, actually gets when it's coupled to the network, and when it can actually gain the benefit of the training data from other peers in the network. And what you can see, there's a substantial improvement in the accuracy, in this case around 10%. That obviously has potentially a huge impact on the ability of doctors to diagnose patients in this case. But if you can think of other applications like fraud detection or other commercial applications of machine learning, those kind of differences in accuracy of 10% are really the difference between, could be worth millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to the actual different participants in the network. So, what we're seeing here is a real demonstration that there are benefits from training a machine learning model in this way. And what we can see on the right, I was just going to talk briefly about the confusion matrix. So what you can see here is essentially the kind of errors that we get from the model. And what we see is that along the bottom is the kind of predictions of the model, and along the side and the rows is the actual labels. And what we can see on the diagonal are the actual correct predictions, and the off diagonal show misclassification. So in this case, what you can see is that 18 normal patients were diagnosed as having COVID-19, and 12 COVID-19 patients were classed as normal. And we think what that represents is the fact that, as we know with COVID-19, there can be some conditions, some situations where people don't suffer particularly bad lung damage. And we think that's probably why the neural network's struggling to distinguish those two classes. So already, even with this simple model, we're starting to get some deeper insight into some of the other aspects of the disease and its features, which of course would have been extremely valuable in the early phases of the pandemic, when we knew relatively little about its effects.
Yeah, so I think just to add to that, what is quite interesting is that this is just only one example in healthcare. The infrastructure, the protocol, and the tools that we're building, they are relevant to much more than just healthcare. And you would be able to use them for fintech purposes, for fraud detection, mobility, IoT devices. And if you think about how to build a business which is more universal, or a machine learning model which is more universal, then the architecture we're building would apply. And something also quite interesting here is that previously these models have been owned by companies. Now, this new way of doing things is whereby the models could be owned by the people training it, and it could be tokenized, and each model can have its own tokenized value, and the participant, the stakeholders in that model could benefit from other people using the model. So you could actually have tokens where the model gets trained much better. The token will also appreciate in value. But that's a marketplace of models that could evolve out of this architecture. So that's really where we are, and I think we will keep you posted on any other further developments via Crowdcast and other channels. But we would invite all data scientists, we would invite machine learning AI engineers to have a look at the code, trial it, and connect with us if there is some interest. So I think we're quite spot on time. So I think we have 7 or 8 minutes worth of questioning. We don't seem to have that many questions, but what I think there is a question, which is, what are the future possibilities of collective learning? Well, collective learning has quite a lot of opportunity, and there is a big market to grow into. So the reason why we chose collective learning is we feel that over time, the data is going to be everywhere. But it's not easy to find a human resource or technology resource to build these models. So if somebody has built a model, what would be much more beneficial is that multiple stakeholders, multiple parties can come together and train the model, which means that one, the time reduces. Second, it actually, the efficiency of the system, as you saw, is much better in a collective learning environment. So the opportunities are vast, depends on, and we will open this marketplace up where people would be able to actually build and deploy these models and invite other parties to train it and have ownership in these models. So the opportunity is great, and the market size is huge. The question is how quickly people adapt to it. John, if you want to add something there.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it briefly in the talk, is that if you look at situations like say predictive maintenance, you have a situation potentially where you have a provider of a particular battery, say a car battery, and obviously if you multiply that battery over the millions of devices that are using it, knowing when it's going to fail and knowing what needs to be done to potentially make its life longer has potentially enormous financial benefit. But one of the issues that the manufacturer of the battery might come across, unless it's Tesla, in which case they control the whole thing, is that it's the manufacturer of the car who actually has access to all of the data. So what this kind of technology enables you to do is the individual car manufacturers all have an interest in that battery lasting longer and giving a better experience to the customer. But what this system allows them to do is that they can all get the benefit of having a more accurate model. We can all get the benefit of having a longer lived battery and a cheaper car, without anybody having to give up access to any of their data or deal with any of those problems. So the real goal there is to really break down barriers between different entities and enable people who potentially might be competing to actually work together. That's one thing. The other thing I would say is, if we look at all the big tech companies, if it's Google search, if it's Facebook, all of the value in what they're doing is the kind of information that they're harvesting from us as consumers. And the great thing about this technology is, what this means is that potentially all of us as consumers can own all of the benefit of the data we're supplying, again, without giving up any of our own private information, which I think is just hugely exciting.
Yeah, so taking to the next question, will AI and machine learning services run on Fetch infrastructure in the future? Yes, absolutely. This is a Fetch architecture. Fetch infrastructure will be integrating the Fed token into the whole ecosystem. So the economic incentives are provided based around the FET token. And FET is a utility token, so you will need that token in the system to actually access these services, deploy different models, or market different models, or invite different participants to come in and train these models. And anybody who wants to come in and train on the model will have to stake a certain amount of FET tokens to be able to become part of the consortium which is training the model. So yes, the short answer is yes, it will be running on Fetch architecture, and it will be using FET token as its field. John, anything? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, already so we have mainnet v2 ready to be launched in March. And all of the data you've seen there has basically been generated using that technology and that infrastructure, which includes our deployment and all of those things. So I can say it already is running on Fetch infrastructure, and it has been from the start.
Sure. How can others join this initiative? As we said, we have all the channels. We have a Slack channel, we have a Discord channel, Telegram channel, we have a website, we have emails. Please get involved if you have any models, any specific models you'd like to deploy, and invite different people to train them with various data sets. We welcome your input, we welcome your engagement. Come and speak to us, send us a message. We'll certainly look at that, and we invite everybody to get involved with it. Then we have other hospitals, care providers, pharma companies reached out to you on this? Well, we actually got a very good response. We recently, Forbes did a coverage on collective learning, and since then, actually, we have had a huge response from multiple commercial organizations and UK, and actually some in South American hospitals have contacted us to see how we can deploy it. So that would be our next stage in the new year. We'll be looking at deploying not just this solution, but several others, to see how we can kind of reach a deployment where it really becomes more normal for all the hospitals to train together.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I think I have another question, Humayun. So the question is, what's mainnet v2 again? So essentially what that is it's our own ledger and our own blockchain. So, and what it has is it has a decentralized random beacon, which makes it very fast and very performant. And it also has really cutting edge cryptography throughout. So what it enables different agents to do is to sync very rapidly with the chain, which enables us to support these kind of next generation agent applications. So in specific answer to the question is that yes, it's possible to run the decentralized delivery network on there. It's also possible to run collective learning on it. You know, those are the kind of applications it will support, but it's also a very fast and highly performant blockchain in its own right. So looking forward to actually releasing more information about that. One other piece of information I can give you is that we're currently running an incentivized testnet program. So I'd encourage you to go to our website and see how you can get involved, because it's live right now, the testnet, and there's plenty of things you can do with it.
Yeah, I think there's another question. As far as I know, OV has built in RBot, which is between Ocean Protocol and Fetch Bridge. Is it being used? Well, not in collective learning. However, you know, we are trialing different methods and ways of collaborating with other projects. Our objective is interoperability always, and as you know, Ocean is more of a data marketplace. We are a machine learning AI collective learning marketplace where you can actually train models, and the trained models can be available for deployment, for training, and for utilization. So these are two complementary things, and the likelihood of us collaborating on multiple things is quite high, and we're looking and we're doing and we have done in the past some collaborations.
Okay. So another question.
The end, but yeah, last question maybe.
One last question. Okay, how do you plan to make this easy for larger companies, since you need to be able to code? So what I'd say is that we're just building graphical user interfaces and different tools to simplify the process. One of the nice things that Humayun was talking about is that potentially, if there's an existing machine learning model and somebody's already done the work, it means that there's significantly less time and energy that you need to actually put into actually building the model. There are some other problems about testing whether another person's data set is similar or compatible to yours. And those kind of more technical problems are also things that we're looking at solving in the longer term.
Yeah, I think it kind of evolves a completely new, different type of marketplace and a business model, because whereas you have these bigger corporations who actually build these machine learning models and actually utilize them for their own benefits alone, there is a different way of looking at it, which is that you can actually create a very quick startup which is just based around a particular machine learning model and a particular way that the model is trained on a certain data set. What this will now evolve into is small startup businesses doing their own training using the Fetch network, where they could use a lot of data sets which vary in location, time, quality, and they can actually very quickly train the models, which they wouldn't have been able to do in the past. So this kind of unlocks a new type of business and a new type of machine learning AI centered business model. We're kind of very excited to hopefully see that coming about over the next year. We're going to encourage encourage as many data scientists to come forward and trial this out, and we could help and support them to deploy the training of these models, and also to try and get more data sets around the world. So there will be some support available for people who want to do something like that in the machine learning environment. I think that's all we have time for. Thank you everybody for joining. We appreciate your time, and we always enjoy the Crowdcast, so hopefully you enjoyed that too.
Yeah, thanks for your questions, everyone. Stay tuned.